Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Synergen Leadership Podcast. Today I speak with Mark Peterson, who is the General Manager of Fleet and Maintenance at Wettenhalls Transport. And I did find this interview particularly interesting for a couple of reasons. First of all, Mark and I explore a little bit further the idea of understanding the commercials when you're in a leadership position. And secondly, I'd like you to listen out for the 4 key questions that you should have the answers to whenever you're going to implement a change program. Because I think those 4 questions which Mark walks you through are really valuable in making sure that your change program is set up to win right from the start. So happy listening, and once again, would love for you to head over to iTunes or Stitcher and leave us a review. So see you on the other side.
Welcome to the Synergen Leadership Podcast with Julian Carl. Julian speaks with leaders from around Australia to bring you their leadership story and share their insights about being a leader. To further help you build your leadership capability, Julian shares his own insights about leadership and the tools and techniques he uses as a leader.
Okay, well, welcome, Mark, to the Synergen Leadership Podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time to come out and be a part of it. So the listeners have some context. Are you able to share a little bit about you, your position, and where you're working at the moment?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Julian. Yeah, look, I work for a company called Wettenhalls Transport. I'm the General Manager of Fleet and Maintenance. So sort of my role there is to make sure that the fleet is maintained and kept in good condition and reliable. We've got around 300 employees at this stage and growing, which is a good thing. We don't do a lot of general freight. We're actually more of a niche freight market, so we've got longer term contracts, and that's across all boards. We've got frozen goods, we've got refrigerated goods, dairy. We also do green waste, bit of recycling. We do a lot of bread movements as well. So it's varied, but they're all sort of longer term contracts, which is nice. You don't have the hassle of the general freight. I've got in workshops, I've got around about 12 people all up who are reporting to me, looking to grow that at the moment. Just like everywhere in the transport industry, trying to find good people is a bit of a struggle. And look, yeah, I've been in the role since July last year, so coming up to 12 months. And boy, the time has gone quick.
So is there an interesting fact that you might be able to share with the listeners about Wettenhalls?
Look, I think it's one of those companies, it's been around for a long time. It originally started off as a Medros and Sons back in the early, about 1907 or somewhere around about that period. So it's been around for quite a long time. It has changed its name, but the family is still involved with the business. So it is a very long-term, stable company.
So I'd like to take you back, all the way back to your very first leadership role. What was that role, and give a little bit of context about it?
Okay, so when I was working with Qantas, I found myself in the continuous improvement area, and that led to, I suppose, a short-term opportunity as a workshop supervisor, where I looked after one of the shifts for the back shop. So this is where all the components were repaired for all the aircraft. So that's sort of where it all began.
Okay. And how many people reported to you in that role?
Look, it was about 60 people on the shift.
Okay.
So it was a little bit of a baptism of fire. But look, it was a lot of fun. I learnt an awful lot. I learnt what to do, and more importantly, I learnt what not to do.
Which leads very nicely into this. The next question is, what were some of the mistakes that you think you made in your first leadership role there?
Look, a couple of things. I suppose I actually had a bit of a thought about this the other day. I suppose it's a common mistake that a lot of new leaders bring, is you're trying to be an expert, you try to know everything and try to have all the answers, and you can't. I actually had one of my leading hands actually pull me aside one day, and he said, look, you don't need to know everything. That's what we're here for. You pay us for our experience. You just have to trust us and support us. So that was probably the biggest thing. It sort of takes its toll on you, but after that conversation, I thought, yeah, he's right.
Yeah, valuable lesson. Yeah. And were there any particular successes that you think you had in that role?
Yeah, look, I think engagement with the people. It was a little bit of a disgruntled workforce. There have been some quite significant changes in that area of the business, and look, I was there for several months, and I got to have a good rapport with everyone. You know, I sat down and had smoko with them and meals with them and had a chat with them. And during those times, we didn't talk shop. We talked about what we did on the weekend and what their football team was, what was going on in their lives, and I think that personal approach just completely gelled that whole shift. And when I left that, they were actually quite a tight-knit team and really, really fun to work with.
And do you think it was during this role that you decided this idea of leadership was for you?
Yeah, look, I think I did, definitely. Look, it was hard at the start, but after I sort of settled down and worked out that I didn't need to know everything, I didn't have to be across every single detail, and learned how to trust people and stuff. I think from that, it was good. And then introducing some continuous improvement thought processes. I found that really rewarding. I've seen a couple of the guys have gone on to move to other jobs, and you keep in touch with them via Facebook and phones and all that sort of stuff. And there's some of them said that, we like the way you taught us to think. It's actually been really beneficial since we've left. So.
And so was continuous improvement a real mindset that you tried to instill in your team?
Yeah, look, continuous improvement, or more just to challenge the way things are done. With a long-term company, you'll find that people are comfortable in their processes and they know what to do. We've been doing this for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. We know what we're doing, and that's it. They're comfortable. They get into the rhythm, and that's it. Just like the jungle drum, just boom, 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 away they go. But it's not necessarily, I suppose, the best way of doing things or the most efficient way. So teaching your staff to question it. Okay, can we be doing this a better way? Is there another way of doing this? That's the sort of area that I really like to do. Just challenge people's thinking.
And what sort of impacts do you think you had on the people that reported to you?
I think, look, for most of them, I think we had a fairly positive impact. I know there was a couple there who did struggle with the fact that we'd changed the way they'd done things for 20 years, and there was a bit of conflict with that. And, a couple of people actually, tried to move to other areas and stuff like that. But look, that's the nature of change, isn't it? Really, some people can handle it, and some people just, no matter what you do, just it's not for them.
And how long were you in that role?
All up, it was about 6-7 months.
Okay. So quite a short stint in your first role.
Yeah, it was, but it was a stepping stone.
Yeah.
So it's, I suppose, I set the foundation, and then from there it sort of led on to bigger and better things. So
okay,
it's definitely worthwhile.
So what did it lead on to in terms of, you've had your first taste of leadership?
Yep.
Where to next for you?
Oh, look, I ended up, again, due to another, I suppose, a situation that arose, industrial dispute. I ended up down at Avalon, running one of the hangars down there on the 747 fleet. So that sort of got my foot into the door of the next level of management, and that then became a permanent role. And in the end, I was actually operations manager for heavy maintenance for Qantas Melbourne, and looked after their 737 fleet. So
it obviously turned out to be the right move for you?
Yeah, definitely.
Can you give a bit more context around the role, number of reports, any key parts of the role?
Yeah, look, at Avalon there, at one stage I had 600 people reporting to me across a couple of hangars. And that was just on one shift. We had 1,300 people there at its peak. It was an incredibly big place. Melbourne, we ended up with, there was 422 people spread between two shifts. And I sort of predominantly looked after one shift, so pretty much half of that. So that was good.
And that was for only the 737s, did you say?
Yeah.
That they sort of split how the maintenance was done?
Yeah, pretty much so. The 747s were done at Avalon, 737s in Melbourne. It's just facility restrictions. The size of the buildings could only fit certain size airplanes in. So.
Do you think because you had a earlier taste of leadership that role was a little easier for you?
Oh, look, for sure. I went into that one a lot more, I suppose, experienced, with a few battle scars. Operated a little bit more, I suppose, astute and smarter in a few areas. Still made mistakes, but you learn from those mistakes and you apply them to the next lesson, and on you go.
And were there any specific successes that stood out for you in that particular role?
Yeah, look, we had a couple of really good ones. One of the areas that fell under my umbrella at Avalon was we had special projects. So any of the campaign modifications that had to be done to the aircraft, they sort of fell under my umbrella, and we ended up setting up project plans and doing that. And we had some amazing success stories with sort of short-term modification campaigns. And the good thing is took with the team with me, and we worked to it, and we all actually grew together. So, we got the project management skills in place. We started managing these things with milestones and resource requirements. And look, it was challenging because the check coordinators used to get quite upset when I restricted the number of people they could have. And no, we need to do it. That's what the workload says we can do. That's what we need to achieve. And at the end of it, they come back and say, "Oh, gee, we're glad you did that because we would have overrun our budget." And so everyone became a lot more commercially astute across the entire business. And then when I moved to Melbourne, those guys in Melbourne were actually pretty well switched on as it was. So that was, it was just basically a bit of fine tuning for those guys and dealing with, upper level requirements.
I just want to explore something that you mentioned there about people being commercially astute. I think that in a lot of the leaders who I have worked with, a lot of the organisational structures don't really allow them to explore that side of leadership, the financials, and as a result, their financial literacy, I don't think, is where it needs to be.
Yeah.
Would you think that's something that's a challenge in today's leadership, or is it?
Yes, definitely. And look, I was fortunate in that, I suppose, with the Qantas side of things, it was one of the areas where they were developing people. So, we had a lot of leadership mentor groups come through. So people like KM&T, amazing people. Those sort of people spent a lot of time with us, and in helping to improve the business, they took you on that journey, and then they pointed you in that direction to people who could coach and mentor you in that area and help it. And it made such a difference being able to understand what levers you could pull that would actually commercially affect the outcome of the business. As I've moved through other businesses, you just come in and you see there's just a complete lack of knowledge in that area. You can see that with your maintenance budgets, where they just sort of take last year's one and go, "Oh, well, that's what we spent last year, that's what we'll spend this year." Well, okay, what makes that up? How do we do that? In a lot of places, it's the accountants control everything. No offence to accountants. They're really, really good with figures, but they're not really good at understanding how those figures apply to what has to be done.
And do you feel as though there was any unfinished business that you had in that role?
Yeah, there was. I had quite a few people that I was developing, and I never quite got to actually see them flourish while I was there. Having said that, I've actually watched a couple of them grow outside of that business, and they've gone on outside the industry and made really good successes of themselves. So I suppose delayed satisfaction from watching them be successful. So.
Okay. And why did you decide to leave that role?
And a decision was made to close that facility down. I was given the opportunity to move interstate, and my oldest daughter was about to start year 12, and I wasn't prepared to create upheaval and uncertainty in the family and that important part of her life. And the youngest daughter was only 2 years behind her, so we thought, no, it's just not worth it. So we'll take the gamble and we'll move on to other things.
Okay. So we've spoken about your first couple of leadership roles. I'd like to explore your current role a bit more. Mm-hmm. First of all, have you done anything differently in this role compared to the other roles that you've had in the past?
Yeah, look, I've probably gone in a lot softer on this role. I actually spent probably 2-3 months just absorbing and watching and just learning what's going on and where the pinch points were and what the problems were. Probably took a little too much time maybe, but not knowing the business and politics around family companies and how all that interacts. But it did give me a chance to formulate a bit of an action plan on what I needed to tackle, what the priorities were, where the real issues were, what was smokescreen.
So can you give any further context about your role as GM in terms of your responsibilities, any metrics that you have to meet, KPIs, things like that?
So I've come into the business that has, like most of the transport industry, is predominantly run on gut feel and reaction. So my role is actually to bring some, process and planning and order to that side of the business. So we're putting metrics in place at the moment. So part of that is going to be overdue servicing, or have to get to a certain point where we don't have servicing that's overdue. And then have that includes a bit of a buffer zone, which we haven't had before. So your service is due at X amount of kilometres, so it'll be X plus or minus sort of whatever percentage we have. It gives you a bit of a safety margin in there. So we're working through that. I do have to set up a budget. We've got a fairly good accountant, so she's got a reasonably good budget in there. I just want to make sure that I'm comfortable that I can deliver to that budget and it's actually, I suppose, sustainable. But from the first cut of having a look at it, she's done a pretty good job.
And what are you learning about yourself as a leader in this role particularly?
One of the things, I suppose, this role's probably tested a little bit, is just controlling your emotions. It's quite easy. You get frustrated, things happen, you just go, why? So just controlling that inner emotion, because you don't want to come across as being overly emotional to your staff or to your peers, etc. So you just got to learn, okay, here I am getting a little bit red, hang on, I'll just keep that to myself, go away a bit later. Okay, so what caused me to do that? Okay, what can I do in future?
And I'm always curious to talk to leaders about what they think they're good at and what they think they're not so good at. So let's start with some of the things you think you're okay at, that you're good at.
I think engaging with people. I think that's definitely one of my personal strengths. Coming from a mechanical background as a tradie, working my way up has given me that ability to match conversations at all levels, and people actually understand that, you actually been there, you know what it's about, and that gives you a bit of buy-in with your staff, which is really, really good.
Mm-hmm. And the things you're maybe not so good at in the leadership space?
I tend to take on a little bit too much. Saying no's, I suppose, a difficult problem that I know I've got, and I know a lot of leaders do. You just want to get out there and make things happen and do stuff, and sometimes you actually got to stop and go, hang on, no, I'm at saturation point, I can't do any more. And then you realising that you're at that point, and then actually being astute enough and I suppose switched on enough to say, no, stop, I can't do any more, sorry, I can't deliver on it. Or if you want me to deliver on that, what are these other areas do you want me to push aside?
So it's about the balance, isn't it, of accepting too much and still being able to deliver what you're supposed to deliver.
Yep.
Yeah. So I wouldn't mind now just exploring a few of your sort of more general views on leadership. What do you think the biggest myth is that you've heard about when it comes to leadership?
I suppose the old story was, when I was on the shop floor, is you'd look at the managers, you'd hear all the comments, that's an easy job, they just sit on their bum all day and don't do anything. No, look, okay, it may not be as physically demanding as swinging underneath a truck or under a train or a plane or whatever else, but mentally it zaps you. You can go home some days and like I've hit the pillow at sort of 6-7 o'clock. That's it, you're gone, you're toast. So it is quite a demanding job from a I suppose a mental point of view.
Very much so. Very much so. So how would you describe yourself as a leader? Are there any words which stand out to you in terms of how you describe yourself?
Look, I like to be, I suppose, overutilised term, but I like to be a little bit consultative. If we're doing stuff, I like to actually engage with people and talk to them, explain to them why we're doing stuff, give them a chance to ask questions or be part of it. I've done a lot of change management in the past, and I suppose the four things that really stick in my mind, and if you can answer these questions, your change management is so much more fluid and easier to apply. But most people want to know, what is the change? Why are we changing? How are we going to change? And what's the effect on me? If you can answer those four questions up front before you talk to anyone about a change program, 90% of the issues will just be gone. If you go in there with a change program without that information, you'll get toasted.
And is it been your experience in various companies and roles that's often what happens?
Yeah, definitely. You see it all the time. I've been involved in a couple of, I suppose, lean Six Sigma rollouts across different divisions and different businesses, etc. Some have been really good. Others, not so good. And that's all been the pre-planning that's gone on, and then having the answers to those questions. In the early days, it was, we've got to implement lean, just have to do it because everyone else is doing it. Okay, so how are we going to do this? I don't know, just make it happen. Okay, so we're going to make it happen. What is it you want to achieve? We just got to get better.
Yeah.
So you've got all these big fluffy statements that actually have no substance, and people just see through that, and you just get shot down.
I think the listeners will see some real value in having those 4 key questions really much at the starting point of a change program.
I've used that consistently, and I know for a fact it does work from experience. If you can have all that information up front before you talk to them, it's 90% of the way there.
And are there any particular positive leadership traits which you think you demonstrate as you go about your role as a leader?
I really do try to, I suppose, walk the talk. If I set the standard that I want, so if I see some rubbish on the ground, I'll go and pick it up. If I see a safety hazard, I'll go and get that fixed. If I see something that's not right, I'll go and get it done. Again, I still quite regularly sit down with the staff, and I'll have smoko with them, and I'll have coffees and everything else with them and stuff like that, because that's where you actually find out what their, I suppose, pain points are. And what you got to remember, as a leader, your job is to remove roadblocks. If you can remove roadblocks for the staff, they will do their job more efficiently, they'll be happier, and things will run really, really well. If you try and isolate yourself and think you're above them, or that's not my job, they'll see through you, you won't get the support, and they'll still turn up, they'll do their job, but you just won't get the best out of them.
I'm always interested to know about leadership tools, frameworks, models, because at Synergen we're always training organisations in things. I'm always curious to know what ones people actually use in the workplace.
Yep.
So are there any that you use?
Yes, look, I quite regularly use the Spinoa, which is your feedback model, before you're going to have a difficult conversation. Okay, that's gone pear-shaped. How am I going to address this? Okay, you run it through your head. Okay, yep. So talk about the situation, the behaviour, the intent, etc., and go through and deliver that. So that's been really, really helpful. The Plan, Do, Check, Act is another one. So we've gone through I had an experience. We've gone through a process. Has it worked? Yes, no. Okay, what can we do to improve it next time? Okay, how are we going to embed those changes? They're probably the biggest ones.
And have you been able to roll those out with your team so that they are familiar with them as well?
I have in previous businesses. This business, I haven't actually done a formal rollout as such. This business, I'm actually doing it by stealth.
Okay.
So they're going to know what's going on now. But it's actually just getting in that thought process. And that's purely because I've got different personalities. And again, as you move through between different businesses, you'll learn that you can't apply the same method and the same model in the same way to it, because every situation is different. The people are different, they react different, the business is slightly different, the culture is slightly different. So you have to be able to take those models and, okay, what is it I want to do? What do I want to achieve out of this model? How do I want to get this message across? So then you look at it, okay, well, I know they react like this. This is the situation. So, okay, I'll attack it this way. So you come in from different things. So in this case here, I'm just questioning all the time, asking the questions. They're getting used to me now asking the questions. So when we have our weekly hookups, they say, yep, okay, here we go. And now they're starting to think like that. So now that that's happening, we'll start to, I'll unpack and explain to them, okay, this is the thought process you've been doing. Here it is. This is the model. And then hopefully we can help that roll it out to the next level so they get supported from their staff.
And what would you say your biggest leadership challenge is right now?
Too much work.
Too much work?
Seriously. Look, we're going really well at the moment. We've got a massive influx of vehicles and work, to be honest. We're short-staffed. Trying to find good people, good tradespeople is really, really difficult. It's quite a brutal market out there at the moment where you can advertise and someone else will find out what you're paying and they'll advertise over the top of you, that sort of stuff. So there is quite a severe shortage of skilled tradespeople out there at the moment. So yeah, busy period with lack of staff is it's quite a juggle at the moment. So the staff are working fairly good long hours. You've got to be mindful you don't burn them out. So we do have a long weekend coming up. So I've instructed them I don't want them working all weekend. There's a couple of them there that they like the little bit of extra hours, but I said to them, short hour, that's it, but only for one day, and the other day you have an off.
And have you got a plan for how you're going to try to find these people that you need?
Yeah, look, we've got some ads out at the moment, but we've actually got to the point where we thought, well, if we can't find people, we've got to start making our own. So we've just taken on a young apprentice, and he started back in January. Fantastic young fella, really keen. And as I was sort of joking around earlier, there are some diamonds out there in the younger generation. You just got to be out there to find them and train them up. So he will be really good by the time we've finished training him up. Hopefully we can keep on to him, but if we provide the right environment, he's happy. I'm sure we will.
And you're still looking for more?
Still looking for more.
So we can put a shout out to all the listeners that if any of you know someone that wants to enter the trade of being a mechanic, diesel mechanic, shoot us through an email or contact Mark directly and have the conversation. So how do you measure your success as a leader?
I've actually never thought about that, to be honest. I sort of look at what I achieve. But that's not really me as a leader, that's me as the manager achieving the targets. So how would I measure myself as a leader? Well, I would like to think that if I've got good engagement with the staff and they trust me, I think that's probably a good one. They feel supported. We used to do employee satisfaction surveys at Qantas, but to be totally honest, that was probably fairly early on in my leadership career, so I didn't really understand it that great deal. But I think from that is probably a good way of actually measuring how you're perceived and how they feel. If they feel supported, feel like they've got some leadership and some direction, I think that's probably how I would measure myself.
How do you look to build capability in your leaders and employees?
Experiences. So something happens, and generally, look, if we have an incident, and as much as we don't want incidences, but they are a learning opportunity. So if something happens and goes wrong, it can be small or a little bit bigger. Thankfully or prayerfully, not anything too big. You take that and as a lesson and dissect it. Look at it. Okay, so what's happened? What's the failings? What can we do? From that, you'll find shortfalls in training, understanding, equipment. And then you go, right, I need to prioritise it. Okay, what do I need to do and do that? So we've had a lot of success in the past in leadership training. So when I was with Coots, when I came into the business there, it was quite a turmoil time after the incident. But I realised pretty quickly we had some good staff. But again, dissecting all what had happened and where the business had found itself, a lot of these people were fantastic mechanics. And they were thrown into the leadership roles as workshop managers because they were great mechanics. But they didn't have the skills. So they were put into an environment where they were set up to fail. So, we identified that reasonably quickly. And as you're aware, we ended up putting in a leadership program, put those guys up to speed, gave them the tooling to do it all. And it was amazing to watch those guys, I suppose their self-confidence grow over the sort of 6 to 12 month period. But more importantly, they actually became more professional. The business improved as a result. Their staff improved as a result. So that's probably the best example I've had. I've had a real success.
And I'm always also interested in the leader's view of networking. It's something which a lot of leaders, I think, don't necessarily put the focus on. So what are your views on networking?
Oh, look, it's invaluable. Now, I'm a dead set introvert. I am really, when it comes to public situations and stuff like that, I've had to learn to get over that and sort of put myself out there a little bit. I'm still very uncomfortable doing it. But I must admit, coming into this role, because I'd already been in the industry with a previous role, I'd actually made some contacts and networks. And so I've come into this role, just contacted and said, I'm here now, just let you know. And from that, you'll be able to call on people. Okay, we've had a problem. Oh, I know who's got that, who's got the part for that. Or, we've got an issue with a supplier. You get on there and talk to the people you know. That networking professionally is fantastic. LinkedIn, look, it's sort of becoming a bit of a Facebook page to some degree. I know they're trying to sort of jump on that a little bit, but there is some good opportunities in there. I've networked on LinkedIn, and I've actually gone to events where I've actually met up with the people I've networked, and we've made some really good, I suppose, professional relationships out of it. So yeah, look, it's definitely important. And if you're an introvert like me, you're just going to have to push yourself through it.
The other thing I'd like to ask you about before we move on to what the future holds is this idea of mentoring.
Yeah,
it's something which I'm a big believer in. So what are your views on mentoring?
Oh, look, definitely. wouldn't say it's critical, but it does gives an advantage. The fact that you're dealing with someone who has been through the battles and knows the pitfalls and knows what success looks like, or more importantly, can actually stop you from doing something really, really dumb, is just, it's the value is beyond dollars. And it works at all levels. I did actually have some younger people when I was with Qantas. We had some young people come through just out of their trade, etc. We actually paired them up with a very experienced engineer as their mentor, and they guided them for 6 months out of their time, and that was their whole job. And it was a little bit of coaching, but more mentoring. It's challenged them. Okay, well you've done that. Where will you go to find information? How would you do that? And then you take it up to the next level, and then you get someone teaching the senior change people, or to challenge and to do stuff, and then it goes up to the manager. So it's applicable to all levels. And I suppose the grey area is confused. It gets confused is coaching and mentoring. They are two different skills, but they do overlap. But I think the mentoring side of it is probably the more beneficial, because it actually teaches you to think as opposed to giving you the answers.
So moving on to the future, what does the future hold for you?
I've had a bit of turmoil in the last few years. I've had to change a few jobs for a variety of reasons. So I'd like to just sort of settle down, and I'm sort of hoping to stay where I am for quite a while, consolidate, and then go from there. That's sort of short to medium term. Medium to long term, look, my goal is to sort of at some stage in the next sort of 5 to 7 years is, I'm going to say semi-retire, but I suppose I want to maybe work for myself a little bit. What I've discovered is over my tenure, I've actually gained an awful lot of experience and information, and that's really great. It's good for me, but it's useless to anyone else. I'd like to share that information, because if information is not shared, then it's not information really. It's just something that's stuck away anyway, like a book. If no one opens up and has a look, then it really has no context. But I get a real kick out of passing on what I've learned to other people, watching them take that and grow. So that's sort of longer term where I'd like to head.
And how do you continue your development as a leader? Is it just through experience, or do you undertake any sort of formal learnings of any type?
Look, I'll take the opportunity for formal learnings when I can. Look, I suppose the more recent stuff has been more role-related technically. So I'm a member of the Asset Management Council, so I've actually got a course coming up on the fundamentals of asset management, where I get to see what the contemporary practices are and see if I can apply those to our industry. I actually have just bitten the bullet and gone back to uni from a professional point of view, doing a sort of a Masters of Engineering Management, and that's more for me to get the engineering experience and technical side of it, because I've come up as a trade base rather than through the education system. A lot of those fundamentals I'm sort of missing, so I'm just trying to fill in some gaps from a technical point of view. But when I do go to seminars and stuff like that, I do look for the opportunities for leadership. Do a lot of reading. Just finished reading a book that the whole leadership team was given, and that was The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So from a leadership development, that's been really, really good to do. We're actually working through that at the moment, so we've got a bit of a report. We've done a survey on it, and working with our peers and developing all that.
So you mentioned that was given to the entire leadership group. Is there something behind that? Is there a philosophy that the executive have?
Look, our CEO, he's ex-military. So the military is really big on teamwork and cohesion and following process. And I think it's one of the things that he had as part of his development, and he's introduced it. And look, it's actually quite good. It makes you, I suppose, question how you see people and how you fit in within a team. And he talks about healthy conflict, because how many leadership teams do you sit in and everyone just nods their head because everyone just wants to get out of there, or they're too scared to say anything, and so you don't really get the best decision. And I think our CEO's recognised there's been a little bit of that, and so that's his plan to sort of break that and introduce a bit of healthy conflict, and you question it. Don't just go along. If someone makes it a statement or a decision, I think we should do this. Well, why? No, I think we should do that. Nut it out, because a little bit of I suppose conflict actually ends up with a better result. So,
And how many in that senior team?
it's 5.
Okay, so it's a good sized team to be
It
talking through and nutting things out.
Yep.
So what challenges do you think your industry sector is going to face?
Oh, look, I think technology, it's just coming in at a rapid pace now. Road transport sort of toyed with a lot of technology for a lot of years, didn't really embrace it, but now the stuff that's coming in is just, and the speed is just incredible. We've just been fitting fatigue monitors to all our trucks, and so these look at the driver and look at their eyes, and they determine if you're sleeping or if you're not looking at the road, and they will send out an alert. They'll vibrate the seat, they'll set off a buzzer to keep the driver awake and alert, and they let their manager know that, hey, this has gone on. The GPS tracking now, it's just coming in more and more. A truck, like we've just bought some new trucks in now, European trucks. We've had to get computers with new software for these ones. Now, we've had software and we've sort of tinkered around the edges before, but these ones here, every service now, you've got to plug these things in and you've got to do that. I suppose the benefit of all this new technology is hopefully it'll actually make it more attractive to some younger people to want to actually come into this industry now, because there is that technology. So they can get in, they can play with their computers, they can do the high-tech stuff. Which has been missing for quite a while, which I think is part of the reason we've struggled to maintain a decent number of tradespeople in the industry.
Are there any leaders that you either look up to or who inspire you?
Yeah, look, there is. Look, you've got all the big names you look at, and Richard Danson. Look, now he is an incredible leader. He's a visionary, and he does some amazing stuff. Some of the stuff's not applicable to every business, but from a high level engagement, that's really good. I like to look a little bit closer at home as well. And look, I had a couple of managers I worked for, and they were really good. I felt comfortable working for them. And they've gone on to other businesses, but I still talk to them regularly. Have a phone call with them every couple of weeks and catch up with them and have a coffee. But I found that they did really well. They engaged people. Everyone who worked for them and with them had immense respect. And I use those people as, I suppose, role models and sort of pseudo mentors.
And where can people find out more about you and Wettenhalls?
Well, from a company point of view, we've got a website, so www.wettenhalls.com.au, and you'll see a fairly good website. It's all being refreshed at the moment, so it's actually looking pretty good. There's a little bit of a blurb on the leadership team in there, and you'll see an article on me and my history. For me personally, I've got a LinkedIn profile. Happy to hook up with people and have a chat. It's there. You'll see my history that's on there, but I suppose these days with social media, so you've got to be careful what you do put, but I got a reasonable snapshot. People get an understanding of where I've come from.
Okay. And any last words on leadership?
Yeah, look, it's one of those things you're not going to know if you've got the ability to do it until you try it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark, for being part of the podcast. Really appreciate it. All the best.
Thank you.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Synergen Leadership Podcast. I trust you found it interesting. A couple of things. If you could go online and leave a review of the podcast, that would be great. Really help us in spreading awareness of the podcast. Happy for you to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. And if you want to shoot me through an email, Julian@synergengroup.com.au. See you next time.